This is the birth of Tweet Hunter, guys. How we built a company that makes $1.5 million a year, and we haven't met. If you could put a number on how many Zoom calls we've gotten together, maximum maybe like 15.
I would say something like that, yeah.
Thibaut actually reached out to me. It was this message that said, hey man, we created this tool called Tweet Hunter. You should try it out. Here's a code for 1 month for free. And at the time, I was ghostwriting. And the way I ghostwrite is I get inspiration from a bunch of people, and I combine it with the experiences of the guy I'm writing for, and it turns out to be something original. And when I saw the tool, it kind of put 3 or 4 software tools that I was currently using: Twitter, Notion, Google, maybe a scheduler, and Google Sheets. Like at the time, SaaS was being very popular on like my side of Twitter, which is money Twitter. I had audience. I had like 25K followers at the time and no product. You guys had a product, but no audience.
When I reached out, do you think before of partnering with the SaaS and creating one?
Like I did study software engineering for like a year or something. And one thing I knew was that I didn't like it. I just really didn't like it.
I think at that time, I was just learning a lot from Twitter. And I think I just saw a thread from you. It was super interesting. I was learning a lot about ghostwriting and copywriting. I didn't think about it and just sent this DM to you. And I was super happy that you cared to answer.
I remember because I think what JK said is something like, I want in. A week later, we signed our partnership.
Yeah, I remember I told you, Thomas, like, dude, I want in. You're like, yeah, you can totally be an affiliate. Like, no, that's not what I mean. It's like, I want in on this thing.
If you want to work with the top players in your industry, you got to give more than just an affiliate link, you know? I think we did pretty well. It was a good decision.
I asked for a percentage in the beginning, and you guys were like, okay, you can not that percentage, but you can get this one, but you will get it as we unlock MRR. So the more MRR we got, the more percentage I got, until I reached the point where we're like, okay, this makes sense. The value was there for both of us.
I think it was smart because like you had skin in the game. We were taking a risk and giving something very valuable, but at the same time, we weren't giving it away for nothing, you know? So I think it was a fair deal.
In the beginning, we're like, oh, we're gonna get some cash and then it's gonna be cool. At what moment did you know this could be something? Was there a moment where like, dude, this is bigger than I thought?
We knew that the launch is going to be big, and like we trusted you in doing something big for the launch, but we really anticipated that the growth would slow down a lot after the launch, like 2 months, 3 months after. I think 2 months after the launch, the growth was still happening, like 20% per month, consistently, month after month, without doing crazy stuff, like just organically by people talking about it to other people.
For me, it was January. We did a few fun things in terms of marketing, but nothing insane. And this was our biggest month, like bigger than the launch month. I think that's when I realized that we had something that was like long term.
Is there anything that you didn't expect it to do as well, but it surprised you when it did?
Auto DM was a pretty huge feature. We were the first ones to create it. Like it really worked really, really well. Like I thought it was just like a nice thing to add, and it wasn't. It was like one key feature that we had. Then in terms of maybe more marketing, the growth contest that we launched was great. Like everyone was so heavily invested. Like all the participants really wanted to succeed. That was in January when we had our great month, and was the greatest yet.
Really making people more successful. It was creating motivation for a lot of people on Twitter because of that.
You want to give a little bit of context as to what this challenge was?
We were giving away 0.1% of the product Tweet Hunter to 5 people who will have the best growth in 3 months. It was a way to motivate a lot of people to grow on Twitter, and for a small number of people, it was the possibility to get in an adventure.
There was this dynamic always in Tweet Hunters marketing in which you push for more of a branding approach. I always push more of a direct response approach because that's kind of where our background was. And on this launch, I pushed heavily for like, guys, this is a direct response thing. We want signups. And you were willing for that time and a long time after to be like, okay, let's do that. When I got a little bit reckless, because I will admit I was a little bit reckless on the launch and continue to be so sometimes, you like really pulled me back and we're like, no, like branding is a thing that needs to happen. And before working with you, I just thought that branding didn't make sense. I was like, dude, like it just doesn't make sense. But you know, when I was like kind of seeing, well, just my Twitter account isn't going to drive drive all the sales and word of mouth started to happen, I transitioned more to your side of the equation. Like direct response is important because it'll like give you some cash in the short term, but the real big money in the long term will come from branding, you want it or not.
Yeah, I think a good advice for people for trying to launch a SaaS or whatever product, by the way, to be intense in your marketing at first. I think you call it direct response. I might call it being intense, being bold. I think it works well, like in the beginning. If you want to prove there's a market for your product, if you need cash, if you need to grow quickly and you don't want to raise money from whatever VC company or whatever, it's a great way to build a solid business right from the start. And then if you want to go to the next step, which is like in the millions of ARR, etc., you got to learn how to communicate in a different way, like more branding.
Yeah, I've had several people tell me, dude, I have a bug, and I messaged Thibaut, he's back to me in 2 minutes.
That's at one point I was thinking about introducing bugs on purpose just to being able to fix them very fast. I didn't do it, obviously. It was hard on my mind.
Thibaut and I read an article recently. They've done studies, and apparently the more you contact customer support, the less likely you are to churn. And contacting support means you have a problem. There's a problem with the product. You're motivated enough to contact support, which means that you're heavily invested in using the product. So that was something we discovered recently.
Like making people happy is worthless. You need to make them successful.
There you go. I like that. Because remember our promise?
That's very well phrased. That's a tweet.
Yeah, there you go. You should tweet that.
Yeah, I talk like I tweet.
Oh, I do that too. You guys do that at the table? Like sometimes? I think in tweets sometimes. Sometimes it's an issue, but I do think in tweets.
Whenever we have a conversation, we're like, that's a tweet.
There was this tweet I remember all the time. It's like, you can't be cool without being cringe for a long time. And every time I do something cringe, I just remember that. Like, yeah, that's cool. That's right. There was this question on Twitter that I really liked. And I'm actually curious as to how you guys decided on this, because you started Tweet Hunter and then I joined the train. So Marcos from Twitter asks, how did you determine equity between tech and non-tech founders? Or maybe as you bring an influencer in, where should your head be at?
I think that's a good question, because it's a little bit more complicated than that, because at this point, I think at the very, very beginning, I think I got the idea of Tweet Hunter. I started experimenting because it were like the child of another idea, which was Tweet Butler. And basically before Thomas got involved in the project, I've already spent a few weeks coding a lot of things. And we had this discussion with Thomas, and we went for 50-50 between us, because there is this idea that coding during a few weeks at the very beginning of the project is nothing compared to everything you would have to go through after that.
Is it an issue that you went 50-50, or would you recommend against that at some point, going 50-50?
I think it really depends on who you're working with. If you have enough humility, and if you're smart enough to admit when you're wrong, or really push when you're convinced that you're right and that you can back it with numbers, like as long as you work intelligently, 50-50 is a great way to go. In some projects, it's good to have one person who has more equity than everybody else at the table, so that there's a direction. But Thibaut and I, we had worked together before, so we knew each other well enough to be able to make a 50-50 split. And if it was the first time me and Thibaut meeting and launching something together, maybe it would have been a bad idea, because like you never know how relationships between founders end up. And it's good that the company can keep going in a direction, even if there's a disagreement.
It's crazy, because the first startup we launched together, we were doing 4 weeks with the lawyer to build a contract between the two of us and the other guy on what will happen if one of us quit the company or doesn't work anymore, or all those little cases. And in this one, for Tweet Hunter, it went so fast. Like we just did something very, very simple, just because we trust each other and because we know that those issues that can be solved by just talking.
So did it make you iffy bringing a third party like me to the company?
I mean, we talked about it. Like there was definitely a discussion. We were very favorable to bringing you in, the both of us. And then it was just a matter of terms, basically. Because when we started talking, we were actually already making a little bit of revenue, like not 140K per month, but we were making making a few thousand a month basically. And since it was so early after launch, it was a matter of, okay, we have something that's already valuable. We want to bring someone in because we think he's going to make it even more valuable. How do we balance things so that you can get a lot of money and we can get a lot of money and we can grow this thing together? That's what we discussed, but we were very excited in working with you. Like as soon as Thibaut sent me, I want in, you know, the screenshot of your reply, and I just checked like, oh, this guy has quite a few followers and he talks about Twitter. It's cool. Let's work with him.
It just came at the right time because our dynamic, I had the inverse dynamic with Ed Lattimore maybe like a month or two ago before we launched. I was the product guy with Ed Lattimore, and by product I mean I put a PDF together, right? I didn't build a SaaS, it was a PDF. And Ed was the guy that brought all the traffic. Together we launched the templates that made around 76K in a week. When you guys reached out to me, I was like, we can make this work at a smaller scale, arguably, but we can make this work. I don't know if you guys have, it has happened to you, but like things kind of start developing themselves. Like I didn't expect this to happen, but when you have an account, like you see these opportunities pop up and these opportunities come to you that you didn't see before. Like we haven't met. Like remember that we haven't met. If you could put a number on how many Zoom calls we've gotten together, maximum maybe like 15.
I would say something like that. Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but like between us three,
I think
because you guys live close.
Like I think Thibaut and I saw each other 3 times this past year. We do have more regular calls than we have with you because we always have to fix some stuff about the product or whatever, or the people working on the product, etc. This morning I called Thibaut for something. He was like, "Oh, it's nice to hear your voice."
We haven't talked in a while.
And
yeah.
I actually like that we have time differences between each other, because when one sleeps, the two other are awake, and there's basically a company running 24/7. We all have time to chat and time to focus on specific stuff that we have to do and that requires deep work. So that's like honestly, like this time difference is it's great actually.
Yeah, because I'm in Guatemala, you're in France, and Thibaut's in Bali, right? We can talk about things that didn't go so well. If you guys are open to it, like, what was the situation that you were like, man, this didn't work out that well?
I mean, no, we did have a few marketing things that we tried that didn't do very well. The more you do, the more you're going to have smaller failures, but they all add up a little bit to the equation. And even if you have crappy side product launches or whatever it is, it always ends up bringing at least a little bit of value, credibility, and branding to your tool and to yourself as a founder. It's rarely a total failure that destroys your company.
I'll talk about one that a big lesson that I learned with Tweet Hunter is that not all clicks are created equal. There's a difference between people actually wanting to try the tool and they're like serious about it, and you just giving something away just because you get a subscription. The context matters a lot. And that's where branding comes in a little bit. I feel like people sometimes bribe people into trying their stuff. While it may get a lot of traffic, not all clicks are created equal. And in the beginning, I thought like, hey, you're gonna get this bonus. But when people only sign up for the bonus, I remember that conversation we had. It's like, yeah, dude, like we're bringing a bunch of people, but are they the people we want? And I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Most of the products that you had built or sold were info products. Once you've bought them, you've bought them, you know, like it's a done deal. And maybe a few people are going to ask for refunds or whatever, but it's okay, you know, like you can handle it. When you're in SaaS, it's actually a lot worse. When you get a customer that leaves the next month, it's not a good thing, you know, like even if he paid for a month, that's not something you want, because that means churn, and churn, like in the eyes of anybody who could one day want to buy your startup or invest in your startup or whatever, churn is the metric they look at, and they don't like seeing high churn, basically.
That was a big lesson I learned from you, bro. They're paying at least for a month. I mean, they quit, but we got the revenue for a month. That's like what you don't want to do.
Exactly.
That makes sense. Thibaut, I have a question for you. How do you come up with so many feature ideas? There's always something new on this thing. Everybody's surprised. Like, where do you get these ideas from?
But I think the main thing is that I built a tool for myself first, so I'm using it daily. And I did this little thing at the very beginning where when you have a question or when you have a bug, the button to report this bug redirects to my Twitter DMs. So I got a lot of DMs. If the ID of this DM is good, or if the bug is like relevant, I do not move to the next DM without fixing or building the stuff.
How do you know when a feature is a must-have and the difference in between a nice-to-have?
I think that's where Thomas comes in. He knows better than me.
For the first 8 months or almost a year of Tweet Hunter, I was the one handling all the customer email. I was just like the receiver for all those complaints that people had or requests or inquiries. Thibaut, he's really good at acting super fast on something. And I had all the knowledge in terms of how many people want this or how many people are suffering from this issue or whatever. But sometimes you just don't know. You just have an idea for yourself and you think it'd be nice to build it. Auto DM is exactly that. Like nobody requested Auto DM. We just saw a certain format of posts that worked well on Twitter. We thought, how can we make the whole process easier? And we built it in like 24 hours. Thibaut built it in 24 hours. Something that nobody knows, I think, is that Thibaut and I, we have kind of a super admin account for Tweet Hunter. And so we have all these crazy beta features that were either never released publicly or that were taken away because we didn't like them or whatever. We have a dashboard that's a bit different than ones from most users. You know, like we have all these tiny features sticking around that nobody wants except for us. And so we use them sometimes.
What feature didn't make it to market that you really liked?
One thing that we were doing at the very beginning is that we created an entire platform where if you like a tweet, you can request a human to write variation of these tweets. There was a team of ghostwriters who were writing the variation and then sending to the clients. But it was so hard to maintain and to scale that we just killed it.
Is there any other feature that didn't make it?
So there is another one. Like I built an entire platform to post something that you want to promote, and a lot of Twitter micro-influencers could just jump in this sponsorship opportunity and get money from tweeting about something. And we killed it because we realized after building it that it was against the Twitter terms and conditions.
What is it like to work with Twitter?
We were in contact a few times with Twitter directly, and like because we had questions like, are we allowed to build this? Different API plans. I find them to be very helpful, but they are a huge company, so it's not always easy to get a reply like in 24 hours. You know, like sometimes you gotta wait a couple of weeks to get a definitive answer about something. But they are very helpful. Like they want you to build tools for the platform. They want more people succeeding on Twitter, and as long as you contribute to that, they're happy to help you.
Which is definitely not the case for any other social media.
We love you, Twitter. Just so you know. Just give us access to everything because we love you. There was like 3 big breaks in my Twitter, I want to say career, right? One was Ed Lattimore with the templates when we partner up. Ryan with Tweets and Clients, which is my current coaching program. And you guys, right? For Tweet Hunter. And when I look back, like the big breaks weren't events. It weren't posts. It was people. It just reminds me of this really cool Matthew Kovac quote, which he goes, LinkedIn is the networking conference and Twitter is the bar after the networking conference where you actually network. And to me, that was like the coolest thing ever, because that is exactly what happened. Maybe one of the levers that allowed you to trust me, it's that because I had this personal brand and you also did, if at some point we crossed each other, we could really hurt each other. Naval says this, it's if you want to like create wealth, take on a lot of accountability. And we all have a lot of accountability, right? There's a lot of people we can help, but there's also a lot of people we can disappoint. If you partner up with like other big brands that are actually or big personalities, right, that have a lot to lose, that actually kind of plays in your favor if you're just starting out, because they have a lot to lose. You know, they took on a lot of accountability. So that's also one good aspect as to why we want to keep this thing going. And
you can't afford to lose that brand. It takes time to build a brand. It's a strong asset, etc. It's not something you want to lose tomorrow. You know?
Yeah, like you mess up the marketing, that's fine. You mess up a little bit of the product, that's fine. You mess up with ethics, you're done. It's over. Well, you can't come back from that. So
I'm just super thankful about everything. That's it.
For me, it was always about like just playing the game. I was a VA, made $250 a month. So for me, when I hit like 5K with my service business, I made it. Like everything else was like game currency at that point. So for me, it was always like, as of a game, I don't really have a why. I have a why not. Like, why not build it if it's so fun? That was the big thing for me always.